This is your wallet just before payday. This is your wallet on payday, and this is your wallet 1 week after payday. How many of you are stuck in this situation? Just 1 week after you receive your paycheck, your money disappears by itself. If you are in this situation, it's time to get your finances straight. It's time to start budgeting. In order to budget, we need to know how much is required for basic survival. Imagine you are thrown into Singapore and here you need to survive. You need food and a decent roof over your head. And you also need to travel to and fro your workplace. So how much is required for an adult to live in Singapore for a month? In this video, I will share how much you need for basic survival in Singapore. Coming right up. The population of Singapore is around 6 million. It is a relatively wealthy country. 1 in 22 people in Singapore is a millionaire. Singapore has a stable government and is relatively free of corruption, and it has very low crime rates. It's a very safe country where you can even safely go out for a jog at night alone. As of 2021, Singapore ranks 49 as the most expensive city on earth. It's not too expensive compared to other cities like New York or Paris. It's important to understand the cost of living here so you can budget your finances. Let us jump right into it. Food. First up, we look at food prices here. In Singapore, the price of a typical meal in a restaurant is around 15 to 30 Singapore dollars depending on what you order. It's quite expensive, so we will have to consider cheaper options. We can cook our meal, but if you are really bad at cooking, fortunately in Singapore, there are hawker centers and food courts which provide much cheaper meals. The ambient and service is not as great as a restaurant, but it fills the tummy. A typical meal at food court can be as cheap as $5. Food courts, hawker centers, and coffee shops are usually within walking distance if you are staying in the residential area. Assuming 3 basic meals a day and perhaps plus a little extra, we can consider 20 Singapore dollars per food a day eating out at food courts or hawker centers. Multiply that by 30 days in a month, the cost of food is 600 Singapore dollars a month. Rent. Next, we need a roof over our head. There are 2 types of accommodation options. We can either choose to live within the city or outside of the city. Obviously, the rent within the city will be more expensive. Since we are on survival mode, we will choose to rent outside the city to save costs. 1 bedroom outside the city costs about 1,500 Singapore dollars a month. Do not worry about staying outside the city too much. Singapore is a small place and the public transport is very efficient. And that brings us to the next living expense. Transport. In Singapore, taxi costs around 18 Singapore dollars per trip. In survival mode, we of course assume we will be taking public transport instead of taxi. For frequency of travel, we assume you travel to and fro work every day and you work for 5 days a week. Being a modern city, fortunately, the public transport in Singapore is pretty efficient and low cost. The price for a typical trip is only $2.50 Singapore dollars. $2.50 multiplied by 2 trips a day for a round trip, multiply by 5 trips a week, and multiply by 4 weeks in a month. In a month, we have to pay 100 Singapore dollars for transport. Utilities. In the utilities section, we assume you have basic electricity as well as garbage disposal. This really depends on how you tie up with your landlord. To be conservative, this will be around 100 Singapore dollars a month. For mobile subscription, we assume it's around 30 Singapore dollars a month. Lastly, we need internet for our home. The typical internet will cost around 35 Singapore dollars a month. So adding all these up, we get $165 that we need to budget for utilities. Other goods and services. We are not done yet. In this section, we put in our household supplies such as toilet papers and miscellaneous groceries. Based on personal experience living in Singapore, I budget around 50 Singapore dollars a month. Margin. In engineering, you always add a safety margin to your designs. For a bridge to hold 100 tons of weight, if you need a 20% safety margin, it has to be built for 120 tons. To be safe, let's add a 20% safety margin to these calculations. Whatever numbers we had before, we multiply them by 1.2. So in total, let us summarize. Food $600, rent $1,500, transport $100, utilities $100, phone $30, internet $35, other goods and services $50. You add that up together, you get a total of 2,415 Singapore dollars. You add a 20% safety margin, that's additional $483. And you get a grand total of 2,898 Singapore dollars a month. And there we have it. We need 2,898 Singapore dollars for a month for basic survival. Agree or disagree with this number? Leave a like and a comment down below. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!